The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
It's not quite what we wanted, but still, 'tis the season. So tonight, we'll eat, drink, and try to remember how to be merry. First, how big trends are shifting food consumption. Then, author Edward Slingerland on the critical role alcohol played in creating human civilization. And finally, some advice on how to ease back into social situations, and even some joyfulness after all this time that the pandemics kept us apart. It's Thursday, December 16th, and that's ahead on the agenda. While the holiday season often includes sharing food and tasty treats with others, again this year, it won't be so simple. In some ways, it's even harder this year with a new surge in the pandemic, rising inflation, and the growing impacts of climate change, including on supply chains. How has it influenced our eating habits? Let's ask. In the provincial capital, food activist, chef, and author Joshna Maharaj, and Marian Chan, principal at Trendspotter Consulting, who works with food manufacturers to figure out the products consumers want. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
So, confession, I was one of those people during the early days of the pandemic that was trying my hand at cooking because I'm not the best cook. And I was very happy when I made a nice loaf of bread that was edible, so points for me. But a lot of things have happened in the past 2 years. Marian, I wanted to start with you. How did the pandemic change our eating habits?
Well, I mean, I think that the biggest change, I mean, you just touched it right on the head, is that people are cooking more. I mean, people always cooked before, but it was always in a very haphazard manner. And so I think that the cooking that people are doing now is much more focused. It's thoughtful. They're putting some time and effort into figuring out what they want to cook and how to do it. Because for those who didn't cook before, they were learning to cook. And for those who cooked before, were being a bit more experimental and preparing foods that were perhaps a little bit different and more involved than they otherwise would have.
And the one thing I did notice too is that I think we're more aware of where our food is coming from. Joshna, how did the pandemic change our eating habits?
I'm with Marian there. The fact that the home cooking piece has been huge, and I have to tell you, I so naively in April or so of 2020, when it was very clear that everybody was back in their kitchens and cooking, I, knowing that it takes, right, they say it takes 21 days to build a new habit. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh please, let this thing last at least 21 days so this new habit can stick, and I got my wish and then some. But it is definitely one of the gifts that has come from the pandemic and from us being forced back into our homes. But like you said, there's more happening here than just more home meals being cooked. It's people connecting to what a mealtime with others in their home on a regular basis actually means. It's, as you said, thinking about how that food is actually going to come in the door, where it's going to come from, how we're actually going to pull it. We're going to buy it and make these connections. And that, as somebody who is really trying to get people's attention about the nature of our food system, it has been amazing to watch. Right? It has definitely been something, although a lot of what we've uncovered has been problematic, mm-hmm. It has been wonderful to see this many eyes and this much attention on the issue, and that I'm really excited about.
One of the things that I saw more of in the past 2 years, it was there before, were those meal planning kits, right? So you don't have to, if you don't go to the grocery store, if you're not a very experimental cook, they have the recipes laid out for you and the food comes to your door. Marian, you follow food trends. How do meal kits do during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
I think meal kits did extremely well. I mean, they were already seeing some pretty good growth before the pandemic, but it was slow, and I think it had slowed just before, but then it took off. And I think that it provided that impetus for people to start cooking, gave them a bit of instruction, because some of those meal kits are very instructive. I mean, they show you pictures, they give you step by step, they've measured everything out. And so it made that cooking process much easier. And it made it easier for people to prepare meals for their family, which perhaps they didn't do as often before. But I think that the interesting thing is what the pandemic did, and where the meal kits come in, is that it brought together a lot of things that were already on the fringes of, work-life balance and how do I feed my family, and food is so central to our lives that when we're forced to do something and we're forced to think about it, it becomes much more purposeful. And the kits gave them that push to do it a little bit more, because I've heard people say, well, I got the recipe and I really enjoyed it, and it actually wasn't that difficult, so I keep the recipe and I still make it without the kit.
I love the point that you made, being more purposeful, because I think before everybody's commuting and you just kind of have to feed people, put food in the hole, right? But right. Joshna, one of the things about these meal kits that sometimes I'm kind of like, ugh, is that they create a lot of waste. I think one time I got one and the onions were like in a pack and then another pack. I was like, why? But you're a fan of meal kits. How come?
Well, I am a fan of them, and I got one as a gift, and I tried it out. And I also was really curious about the waste, because everything was in its own plastic package. But when I poked around and I did some research, I found largely the argument being made on behalf of these companies is that the diversion from the grocery store and from that whole sort of network and channel, this packaging is actually a savings, and is actually minimal in comparison. So that is interesting. I have yet to I asked for an invitation to visit a facility, and that has not yet happened. But it's an interesting argument, and I'd be curious to pull the thread on that. But I think that meal kits are wonderful training wheels for people who are nervous about having success in the kitchen. Right? As Marion said, there are beautiful, the effort that's gone into those teaching materials is quite substantial. And I think that they are a wonderful tool. And as we've heard, people say, oh, I can do this. You know what I mean? If it just means the extra effort is that I buy the steak and I have to chop it up myself, or I have to cut this onion myself, I can do that to pull this off. And if that is an effective way to pull people, in a safe way into the kitchen, I'm all for it. I think it's a great way to do that.
I've made food with my kids, and my kids really love them. So, on top of everything else that we're having to navigate right now, we keep hearing about inflation. Everything is going up. Marion, milk and all dairy products will cost a lot more in 2022. The Canadian Dairy Commission has recommended the largest increase in its history. How will inflation influence what we eat? Marion?
It's been very interesting. I mean, I think what the pandemic has really brought out is that huge divide between rich and poor, or food insecure and food wealthy. And in the short term, for those who are in the food wealthy, they spent so many, like almost 2 years, really not being able to spend any money, not being able to go on vacations, not being able to go to restaurants. So they're going to be less affected. They're going to complain, and they're going to groan every time they go to the grocery store, and it will be a topic of conversation. But for the most part, those who are food wealthy will not really care that much. The big problem is for those who are the food insecure, and we talk about this so much. I mean, I am a part of a Rotary Club, and we spend a lot of our resources getting food for the food banks, getting essentials for shelters, getting some of those things that people need. And it's going to be a huge problem. But how people are changing the way they're eating is, they've already started cutting back on expensive inputs like meat, cheeses, and those kinds of things. But so the inflation piece makes it even more necessary, becomes necessary, as opposed to a personal choice of eating more pulses and legumes and things that are more plant-based. And so while it's not necessarily a choice that they might have made otherwise. It's kind of forcing them into that area of I'm going to eat less meat. One, because it's more expensive, but the other part is that it's probably better for me anyway. So it's kind of pushing people towards eating less of those more expensive items.
And just to follow up on what Marion said, Josh and I, we know that food banks are experiencing so much demand. People who've never used food banks are using them now. But you have some strategies on how we can cook food or eat well inexpensively. What are those strategies?
Yes, definitely. We know for sure that the most affordable way to eat is to cook food yourself at home. And so even if it is the simplest little sort of saute of vegetables or things like that, first of all, investing in cooking in your home is one of the most important ways to address food insecurity and to build your own skills, right? A lot of people don't really know how to cook that much. Those skills aren't being passed down through families. So home cooking is really, really important. I also like to imagine that if you cook something once, you can make enough for leftovers to be repurposed at another time. Doing things like this also really helps you eliminate food waste because so much of the food that gets wasted, unfortunately, it happens in the home. There's a huge amount of food that gets wasted at the home level. So if you cook more economically, cooking more economically means planning things out a little bit, thinking about what your next sort of 5 meals will look like. And if you want to use sweet potatoes 3 times, cook them once, have them prepped, ready to go, so that it's nice and easy in the next few days for you to put those meals together, right? It's like this funny game that you play with your present self, taking care of your future self, in this sort of way. But this is the most economical way to keep a kitchen running and to feed as many people as possible.
Marion, you mentioned that people are eating less meat. Is there such a thing as a climate change diet?
I don't think anybody would consider it a climate change diet. Well, I should back up and say yes. I mean, I think there are some people who are on the front edge or a bit more radical, who are saying, you know what, I'm cutting it all out, no animal products at all. And here comes the vegan. And so there are a lot of vegans who are vegans because of climate issues. They don't want, I shouldn't say all climate issues, sustainability issues, I think is more of the issue here, is because people are saying, well, I want to make sure that animals aren't being harmed, or the cows create too much environmental issues. And so there are those who are doing it for environmental reasons, but it's more about a sustainability, ethical raised animals, organic vegetables. I mean, those are the kinds of things that are kind of on that leading edge. But there's a lot of those in between people where you would say those are the flexitarians, and they're the ones who are perhaps eating less meat or have cut it out. But if they go to somebody's house and they're served a piece of chicken or a steak, and they're not going to be rude and not eat it, but their choice is perhaps not to eat it.
And Josh, now going back to that piece about how we're thinking about where our food is coming from, what we're eating, we've seen the effects of the climate crisis in the past few months, on top of the pandemic, on top of everything else, in Ontario, yes, here in British Columbia. And I think people are trying to rethink their role in the climate crisis. So can somebody who eats meat also be an environmentalist?
Yes. Definitely. And I think one of the really important nuances of this conversation that we are not having is that there is an ethical way to eat meat. Not all meat consumption is the problem. The problem that we're addressing here is factory farmed industrial meat production, which is what is causing so much unrest and directly contributing to climate change. But there is an ethical way to do this. There's a way that is fair to both the animals, to the land, to your wallet, to the community, to your health. There's a way to do this. And that is what we need to start paying attention to, right? It is not because on the the other side of things, there are a lot of plant-based food options that are not great, that are not legitimate climate change solutions either, right? Some of the vegetable proteins and all the different bits required to produce this food is really energy intensive. Never mind the fact that they end up being really highly processed foods. So we have to think a bit more about this. We have to think deeper to really talk about industrial food production, factory farms, and that sort of whole angle on meat eating, and the cheapness of it all is really the problem that we need to address here. So yes, there are definitely ethical, sustainable, climate-friendly ways to consume meat.
Well, it's interesting you said that, the cheapness, because Marianne, there's a lot of people who are just trying to get food on the table for their families. Right. It doesn't mean that they're bad people because they're eating cheap meat, because we know if you want to eat organic meat, it's a lot more expensive than, you know, the mass farmed food. So how can eating right for the sake of the planet be cost effective?
You know, people make choices, and I know lots of people, and I've heard of lots of people when, if we kind of go back maybe 15 years, we were talking about organic vegetables. I mean, those were kind of the new things. And I was speaking at a conference, and they had a specific company's conference. And so they had all of their executives on one side, and they had their plant workers on the other side. And a few of the plant workers actually put up their hand and they said, I can't afford to feed myself organic vegetables, but I want to make sure that my children have the best opportunity and the best diet possible. So I have two fridges. I have one fridge for the food that my husband and I eat, and I have one fridge for all the food that my children eat. And in that refrigerator are all organic vegetables, all the things that I believe are the best possible foods for my children to eat and grow healthy on. And then my husband and I will just eat the less expensive stuff. We eat more. And so those are choices that people are making. I mean, even in those situations, not everybody is in a position to be able to make that choice. But I think for some, where they can, they will make some changes to their diet and make some choices that fit with their budget wherever they can.
That story is, you know, the sacrifices that people go for to make for their families is just, Joshna, we learned so much about supply chains during this pandemic. 2 days ago, the Ontario government announced that they're investing $1 million annually to promote locally grown food. They're encouraging Ontarians to buy fresh, locally grown and made agri-food products. How far can this policy go into changing habits?
It can go really far depending on what local network we're talking about and what we're focusing on. I need to do a bit more research and reading myself about the area and the intention behind this initiative. But really, the idea of eating locally has never meant more than it does right now. And so it's encouraging to see this kind of thing, because originally our argument around local eating was about climate change and about greenhouse gas emissions and this sort of thing. But now it's a matter of community food security. Right now it's like when things get thick, when disasters hit, and there is, you know what I mean? You turn on the news and it is not a calm scenario out there. And so if we have to think about the next time something like this might happen, hopefully it is much later than sooner, but what are the networks that exist on the ground, right? And the focus on local food now there's two reasons. One, it's about keeping communities together and ensuring good food supplies for people, because what my pandemic experience really taught me is that our way out of this, or the newer post-pandemic version of our food system, has to be about a network of grassroots communities of people who care about each other, right? This is the thing. This is how we are going to get through this. We can no longer imagine or depend on national distribution lines or that there's even one solution that works for this whole country, right? We are a very diverse group of people here, and the strength is going to come in us building the tighter weave right on the ground, and local food is a huge part of that.
It's been really cool to see different communities with the urban gardens come together to feed their communities. Marianne, what is a positive thing that has happened to our diets as a result of everything that's been going around, including the pandemic, inflation, and the climate crisis?
I think that the number one, and Josh touched on it, is cooking at home. I mean, if you want to save money, that's the best way to make sure you can control what you're spending. But the food is healthier. I mean, being able to know exactly what goes into your food, how it's prepared, how much salt there is, how much sugar there is. I mean, there's so much more control of being able to cook at home. And I think that people are realizing that. I mean, when you ask somebody who bakes, well, why do you go through the hassle of baking your own bread when you can walk out to the store and pay, $2 or $3 for a loaf of bread that's ready to go? And people, inevitably, the number one reason is so that I know what is in my food. So I think that is just being able to say, I know that this dish has this, and this. And for some people, it's like, and all of these ingredients are all local ingredients. And right. I think that is something that people are finding really a lot more important than they ever thought, because it's not. Yes, it started as a climate change issue, but it's become a point of supporting your community, supporting the local economy, supporting our country, whether it's, right. You have, meat from Alberta, or you have vegetables from Nova Scotia, or, whatever you're buying. If you know that it comes from at least our country, you feel better about it. And again, if you can afford to make those choices, I think there's a lot more people making those choices today than they ever did before.
Josh and I saw you nodding.
Yes, definitely. This is exactly, we are seeing this and understanding that not everybody, as Marion said, is able to make this choice. But if you are, these choices count, I think, more than they ever did before. So I cannot encourage this thinking. And yes, it is a little bit more effort. Yes, it is perhaps less convenient, but I think we are really getting a sense of what the comfort and convenience is costing us. Right? This is sort of part of the issue here. And so paying attention to local eating and considering the community of people around you is got to be close to everybody's top of list.
But how do we break that habit of eating food that's off season? I think a lot of us have become accustomed to eating, raspberries from California in the dead of winter. How do we change that habit, Joshna?
I think one is to really rethink what seasonal eating is all about, because the way I see it and the way I like to tell people is when it's strawberry season, I am all strawberries all the time, right? And it is indulgence, and they are beautiful and gorgeous, and I eat my fill until they're gone and something else happens, right? And then it's stone fruits, and then it's peaches, and and then it goes on and on like this. And so enjoy the rhythm of the passing seasons, right? Those poor out of season raspberries are so sour and pitiful, right? They don't, the melons, they hurt your mouth, the pineapples leave, don't do it. Don't. And when I see them, I'm like, I just want to apologize in the grocery store. I'm like, I'm so sorry, the journey you took to get here, and you haven't even been able to be your fullest self. You know what I mean? It's a real sadness. So let the melon have its moment to be the best version of itself, and then move along to something else. If you're desperate for it, maybe think about a local frozen option, because we've got lots of that here in Ontario. But really think about the fact that seasonal eating is about wild indulgence until you move on to the next thing, right? So right now we're getting serious about our apples. That's our wild indulgence right now.
I'm laughing because I have strawberries in my fridge right now.
But they're sad, right? Aren't they so sad?
They are. They're pretty sad.
Best version of themselves, exactly.
Marion, I want to ask you that same question. Yeah.
I mean, there's also, efforts to have hothouse grown. I mean, I was so happy last year, or time is so fluid these days. It was longer than that, when I was able to buy Ontario grown strawberries in December. And I thought, is this a freak of nature? But they were delicious. And I caught them because I could smell them before I saw them. And I think that is something that is, being able to grow things locally in hothouse situations that are perhaps out of season. But more to break the habit is, I mean, the supply chain issue and products that are slower to come. I mean, I think that that's going to force people's hands. I mean, as a lot of the as Josh was saying, it takes 21 days to break a habit. So if we're now in almost year 2, completing year 2, I think the habits are being set in stone, and we are going to be eating very differently for the next foreseeable future. And as we think about it more, we may try, but human nature is that if it's available and we can buy it, we will buy it. Yes. So the trick is to make it unavailable, and we'll figure out a way to get over it.
Marianne and Joshna, thank you so much for this. I know that the past few years have been really difficult, and the lessons that we've had to learn have been challenging. But as you said, I think it's a lot to take on. Maybe we can live differently moving forward. Thank you again for your time. We really do appreciate your insights.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Whether you drink or not, alcohol is a major factor in the social and cultural lives of people around the world. And according to a new book, that's because it was fundamental to the advent of human society. The book is Drunk: How We Sipped, Danced, and Stumbled Our Way to Civilization. It's written by Edward Slingerland. He is a professor of philosophy at the University of British Columbia, also with appointments in the departments of psychology and Asian studies. And he joins us now from Vancouver, BC to explain. Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Excellent, excellent book. I don't have to remind anybody that we've been in this pandemic for a while, and you wrote this book during the pandemic, and studies have shown that alcohol consumption has gone through the roof, and in most places around the world, liquor stores were considered essential services, so they remained open during the pandemic. What did the pandemic reveal about our relationship to alcohol?
Well, the fact there was debate about what essential services were, in the States, our golf courses, essential services, liquor stores were never questioned. That to me was significant. So it's the consumption of alcohol is so deeply woven into human societies that it really is something that's hard to eliminate. So in the book, I'm trying to explore what the history of this is and why it would be that no one questioned the fact that liquor stores were essential.
And as you mentioned, alcohol is so much a part of human life. Yet you write that there is a prejudice against chemical intoxication, but without it, we might not be where we are today as a civilization. I wanted to read a passage that you write in the book. You write, "It is quite likely that the desire to get drunk or high gave rise to agriculture rather than the other way around. Agriculture, of course, is the foundation of civilization. By causing humans to become, at least temporarily, more creative, cultural, and communal, to live like social insects despite their ape nature, intoxicants provided the spark that allowed us to form truly large-scale groups, domesticate increasing numbers of plants and animals, accumulate new technologies, and thereby create the sprawling civilizations that have made us the dominant megafauna on the planet." I think a lot of people will hear that passage and think, what? How has intoxication become a necessity for humankind?
The standard story that we've always been told is that our taste for intoxicants is a mistake. So we like to drink alcohol because it just happens to hijack a pleasure center in our brain. So it's a kind of hijacking of our reward systems. We've also been told that the discovery of alcohol is a mistake. So humans created agriculture, we started growing things, we had bread, and then one day someone left their sourdough starter out for too long and it started to ferment, and they tasted it and made them feel good. So lo and behold, we have beer. As I started digging into the scholarship on this topic, it became clear it's actually both of those things are wrong. So our taste for alcohol is incredibly dangerous and costly. Alcohol is physiologically harmful. It causes all sorts of social problems. It's economically extremely costly. So there's got to be part of the mystery I want to explain in the book is what are the benefits that are paying for these costs. It's got to be doing something, not just giving us pleasure, because evolution doesn't care about pleasure. Evolution doesn't want us to be happy. It's got to be doing something functional for human beings. So that's one reason that it's so tied up with the beginning of large-scale societies.
Can you explain how alcohol drove to innovate better agricultural practices?
So we, as a species, are uniquely dependent on tools and things like agriculture, which means we're dependent on creativity. And the problem is the part of our brain that allows us to be functional adults, the prefrontal cortex. It's what allows us to delay gratification, stay focused on a task, be grown-ups, show up for things on time, get work done. The problem with it is it interferes with lateral thinking. So it interferes with the ability to solve problems when the solution requires you to think outside the box or combine things that seem very different. So the trick is humans need to be able to we don't want 4-year-olds who are very creative trying to develop new vaccines or deciding what our economic policy is going to be. What we need is adults who can temporarily regain that childlike flexibility. And alcohol is a tool that we've used to do this. So people use this idea of alcohol as muse is found throughout history all over the world. And it's not a myth. Alcohol actually helps with creativity by temporarily turning down the prefrontal cortex for a little bit and allowing us to be creative, to think of new things, to share new things because it's disinhibiting us. But then it wears off and we're grown-ups and we can actually take those things we've thought of and do something useful with them.
What about group innovation? You write about the whiskey room at Google.
Yeah. So one of the motivations for writing this book was seeing how successful organizations actually use alcohol strategically in this way. So I gave a talk on my previous book, Try Not to Try, about the relationship between spontaneity and creativity. And after the talk, the engineers who were showing me around campus said, "You have to see this place." So they took me to this whiskey room. So when they are working on a problem and they've done as much as they can essentially with their prefrontal cortices, they've worked on it, they pounded away, they hit a wall. Instead of sitting in front of their screens and pulling an all-nighter, they go to this whiskey room and they sit in beanbag chairs and they have a sip of whiskey and they play a little foosball. And they say that often it's in situations like that, the PFC is gently down-regulated, you're feeling relaxed, you're thinking in a different way, that someone says, "Hey, how about this?" And they get a solution. So the fact that successful organizations like Google make a place for alcohol in their organizational structure suggests to me that it is a good strategy.
Well, I'm sure there are people who are watching this or listening to it thinking, but I don't drink. And it seems as if in a society, whenever someone says they don't drink, we're kind of suspicious of that person. We think, why are you not drinking? Why do we respond to non-drinkers in that way?
Because one of the functions of alcohol is to increase creativity and group innovation. The other function is to help us overcome cooperation dilemmas. So human beings, especially in large-scale societies, are constantly having to cooperate with and trust strangers or relative strangers in a way that no other primate does. It's really amazing how we cooperate. But we're often in situations vulnerable to what economists would call defection. We're vulnerable to people taking advantage of our trust and benefiting from that. And so we've evolved various mechanisms for trying to tell who's reliable, who's probably honest, who seems trustworthy. We read people's facial expressions, tone of voice, things like that. The problem is it would be great if you were untrustworthy, but you could fake being trustworthy. So this is this problem that's really at the heart of human sociality. And my argument is cultures use alcohol to kind of give a leg up to the cheater detectors, because again, the villain here is the prefrontal cortex. If I'm going to lie to you, if I'm going to present to you that I'm someone who I'm not, or that I'm willing to, you can trust me in ways that I'm actually not trustworthy, I need to be able to keep in track in my mind both what's true and what I'm lying to you about. And that's cognitively really demanding. So if you can, again, get everyone around a table, give everyone a little bit to drink, turn down the prefrontal cortex a little bit, it makes it harder to lie. And
because the idea is that you're more honest when you're drinking?
Yeah, so the idea of, the ancient saying in vino veritas has some scientific evidence behind it. It really is harder to lie. It really is easier to get a sense of who a person is as a person when you've had a little bit to drink. So this is why, again, throughout history, all over the world, when you get potentially hostile individuals, or at least people who are strangers to one another, and they need to come up with a solution to a problem or agree on something, the alcohol comes out. You see this in business, you see this in politics. And again, there's very good reasons for this.
You write about the history of alcohol and how the fermentation, but you write that, when we started to distill alcohol, things changed. How did distilling alcohol change your relationship to alcohol?
So for most of our history with alcohol, we've been drinking relatively weak, so 2 to 3% ABV beers. And those are perfect. All of the functions that I talk about in the books tend to peak at about 0.08 blood alcohol content. So about when you should operate a motor vehicle or heavy machinery. If you're drinking a 2 to 3% beer, especially with food and with other people, you don't get past this level of inebriation. But relatively recently, so really only a couple hundred years ago, which is, I'm telling the story that starts 10 million years ago with our primate ancestors. So this is a blink of an eye evolutionarily. We developed a way to get around the limits of natural fermentation and create, 90-something% ABV vodkas and strong spirits. These are really, really dangerous. So we figured out a way to deliver ethanol to our bodies at a pace and at a strength that we've never had to deal with before. And I don't think that either genetically or culturally we've completely adapted to this new danger.
Well, you write that distilling alcohol and isolation, as in drinking alone, are the twin banes of modernity. What did you mean by that?
So the distillation is just this increased strength of the drug that we're having to deal with. The second is that cultures have always known that alcohol is potentially dangerous. It's just very dangerous. So they want to use it. They want to capture the benefits, but they want to limit the risks. And the way they've done this historically has been, first of all, you never have private access to alcohol. Alcohol is always consumed socially. It's always surrounded by ritual regulations. So you can only drink when someone toasts. Certain people have the right to suggest toasts. People can control the pace of drinking. Even in what seems like very informal situations, so people going to a pub after work and drinking, there's unwritten rules. You drink in rounds. So if I drink too fast and I'm done, I have to wait for everyone else to be done to order another round. I have to order from a barkeep or a server, and at a certain point they could start not seeing me when I'm trying to get their attention because I've had too much to drink. We have all these ways of socially regulating our drinking, and that helps protect us from the dangers of alcohol. When we drink in isolation, especially, during COVID lockdowns, drinking has gotten really out of control because all of these social controls have been removed. So we have alcohol comes with this built-in safety feature that we got around, we disabled through distillation. And then we're dismantling the social safety features that we used to have. And so, drinking alone and drinking distilled liquors are really terrible combination.
I want to go back into the book and read another passage that you wrote. You write, "The happy notion of doctors prescribing 2 glasses of wine with dinner was shattered in 2018 with the publication of the study in the prestigious medical journal, The Lancet, mentioned in the introduction. While acknowledging that moderate alcohol consumption might provide some modest health benefits, it noted that these were far outweighed by the massive costs in terms of accidents, liver damage, and other causes of early mortality. It concluded that the safest level of alcohol consumption was 0. I'm guessing even when I was reading this book, I kind of felt conflicted because it's one way we are where we are because of alcohol. And then some people are getting advice you should never, ever drink. And alcohol has played a crucial role in our civilization, right? So given the social cost of alcohol and other toxin abuse, why has the production and consumption of alcohol remained at the heart of human social life?
This is the mystery that is not explained by our current way of looking at alcohol consumption. So one of the other motivations for the book was that our public discourse about alcohol is exclusively in this medical framework. So it's all medicalized. We're just talking about physiological costs. And if that's all you're looking at, or we're talking about social costs, so we're talking about alcoholism or drunk driving or these other all very well-known and terrible costs of alcohol consumption. But then on the other side, all we've talked about is fun. So people like to drink. If you're looking at physiological costs and social costs on the one hand, and then fun is the only thing on the positive ledger, you're going to say we shouldn't drink alcohol. The safe level of drinking is 0. If we actually get a broader view of the function of alcohol using anthropological evidence, historical evidence, cognitive scientific evidence about the advantages of mild inebriation, we're in a better position to make intelligent decisions about what the role of alcohol should be in our individual lives and in our society and the institutions that we're involved in. Up until now, I think we've been kind of flying blind. We've had this very partial and limited view of the function of alcohol. Once we get a broader picture, we see the benefits, we may still say, safest level 0. Say we shouldn't have alcohol at official events. We shouldn't allow it on college campuses. You could make decisions like this and defend them, but you have to have all of the functions laid out for you if you're going to make an intelligent, balanced decision about this.
And in the book, you also write that some people are predisposed to becoming alcoholics. Were you at all concerned in the writing of the book that some people might take your book as a rationalization to get drunk, or even that you were promoting alcoholism?
Yeah, and I was worried about that, which is why there's a whole chapter dedicated to the dangers of alcohol. And in fact, so I've had people say, well, is that chapter something your publisher made you add to cover your butt? No, it's not. It's baked into the structure of the book, because the fundamental question driving the book is, why do we still do that? We've been doing this for literally tens of thousands of years all over the world. Cultures that do it are successful. Cultures that try to ban it, it doesn't tend to work very well. We should be more puzzled about this than we are. So the whole motivation of the book is, given the terrible costs of alcohol, especially if you're genetically predisposed to alcoholism, given the physiological toll it takes upon us, why do we still do it? And so the costs are really what motivated the book in the first place. They're not just an afterthought. Alcohol is incredibly dangerous.
What has the reception been like for the book?
It's been great. I think that I think that a lot of these functions, people have had an intuitive sense of. People have known that, hey, an office party is a little bit more fun. Not just fun, but we get to know people better. We get a better sense of camaraderie among teams if we have a little bit of alcohol. People have always known that, hey, maybe write on a beer or two and then edit on coffee is a good idea. It's a way to come up with punchier prose. So I think a lot of the functions that I'm documenting, we've had an intuitive sense of. And I think people have liked actually then having some real historical and scientific evidence to back up these intuitions they already had. Well, and I think even publicly we've had this because, again, given the Lancet article, there's no benefits to alcohol. Why were they an essential service? I think even policymakers at some level have a gut feeling that alcohol is doing something for people beyond just making them feel good.
Well, you raise a lot of great questions in the book. We could actually talk about this for about an hour, but we do appreciate the time you gave to us. Congratulations on this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Has prolonged isolation and social distancing caused people to forget how to socialize? As the pandemic keeps its grip on us, you may have heard talk of cave syndrome or of languishing. With us for some coping strategies and advice on possibly improving your mood, we're joined from Oakville, Ontario by Ramit Bilen, President and CEO of Viewpoint Leadership and an expert on psychological capital. Hi, Ramit.
Hi, Nam. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
We're so happy you're on the show because I think a lot of us need this advice right now because there's a lot happening in the world. There are a lot of psychological terms floating around that might describe how we're feeling. The first on our list, the New York Times dubbed possibly the dominant emotion of 2021, which was languishing. What is that?
Thank you for kicking us off with that, because languishing, that includes those feelings of feeling unsettled or maybe even restless. For some people, it's not feeling as though they're motivated in order to complete their tasks. And when they do complete the tasks, they're even more drained than they were previously. So when we think about this term languishing, it's checking in with how we're feeling and where our motivation is and looking at whether or not we're feeling unproductive.
I think a lot of people, when you ask them, how are you doing? A lot of people have been saying, I'm pandemic fine, because we feel like we don't want to overwhelm people with our emotions. And another term that we're going to go over is cave syndrome. What is that?
So cave syndrome is a little bit different than languishing. It's that feeling of anxiety or maybe even feeling uneasy, getting back to those in-person interactions or those social gatherings, which some people are feeling leading up to the holiday season. And so people have been keeping in their COVID cave, and exiting that might be making them feeling anxious. Now, this could be, Nam, for a number of reasons. It could be because of adaptive reasons. It could be because of inconvenience versus symptomatic. It could be fear of public spaces, or even that emotional burden that people are carrying with them. But it's important for us to also know that this is a normal stress response to all that we've experienced in the last 644 days since the World Health Organization declared that what we're experiencing is a pandemic.
That is a long time. I've been very awkward when I meet new people because do I shake their hands? Do I do the elbow? Do I just wave from across the field? I haven't. Do you think that it's going to take a while for people to figure out how to be like before times? Or is that a problem to think about everything as in before times?
I love that question, because transitions are difficult for all of us, whether we're talking about our children, youth, or even for us as grown-ups and adults. If we're transitioning back from what it is that we've gotten used to over 644 days, that's going to take time to adjust. Just as we had to adjust almost 2 years ago in doing things in new and different ways. So allowing ourselves that time to adjust is going to be important. Now, some people are feeling burnt out, and it's because we're experiencing that cost of the mental effort that's been involved in doing things in new ways, right? It's been a little bit of a roller coaster with new routines, new restrictions, new policies. And so as we transition, it is going to take time to adjust, but allowing ourselves and giving ourselves that grace is going to be important.
Well, burnout is another term that I wanted to go over with you. People are working from home. We seem to have more time in the days to get things done because we're not commuting, yet people are feeling burnt out. Why is that?
Well, our home tasks and our work tasks and even our life tasks, they're kind of competing with each other. And here's what's fascinating about burnout. This isn't the type where it's, I'm tired, I need to go rest. It's the I've rested, I've had adequate rest, and I'm still tired. It's that excessive exhaustion. And what's interesting is that in 2019, the World Health Organization actually included workplace burnout in their international classification of diseases. Now, this was pre-pandemic. Pandemic has just amplified this attention between all the different things that we have to do. And even though for some of us we're not commuting, we absolutely are filling that time, whether it's with more work or trying to get stuff done around the house or even trying to take a break for ourselves.
Another word that we've been hearing a lot is resilience. And I apologize in advance, but I'm so tired of that word, that and pivot. But you call yourself a resilience researcher. Where are you with that word now while we're in the midst of this pandemic?
Nam, you said the P word, you said pivot, but talking about resilience, many people are tired of it because it has been 644 days. It's, don't tell me I need to be resilient. We've gone through a lot, whether we're talking about COVID-19 or the echo pandemic related to our well-being, our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health. We know there's been an increase in gender-based violence. We know about the tragedies and the heartbreaks that have happened around the world and even in our own backyard. And people have experienced a lot. And so when we talk about resilience, in the beginning, it was quite a popular term. It's how do I bounce back from these challenges? And now it's more about, okay, I'm burnt out. It's not that I need to bounce back. I just need to sometimes survive because I'm feeling like I'm in survival mode. I don't know about you, Nam, but I often feel that way too. And just get through the day or even the week. And so, yes, people are a little bit tired of the word, and the word itself encourages us to bounce back from our challenges. Now, I would actually encourage us to redefine resilience and not just bounce back, but how do we learn? How do we grow? How do we find meaning from these challenges that we've encountered?
Well, we've heard this term also used when we're talking about kids. We're saying that kids are resilient, so the situations that they might find themselves in are okay because kids are resilient. How does that term apply to children?
Well, here's the thing. Children and youth, they're burnt out just as we as adults are. They've experienced so much during this time, whether we're talking about limitations and restrictions to rec centers or libraries, activities that would have given them an outlet. And they've been through that. They've gone through this experience. There's also the uncertainty and the fear of losing a loved one, whether it's a parent, guardian, or a grandparent in their life. And so when we think about kids being resilient, yes, they are. But even before the pandemic, there were wait lists as it relates to mental health supports for youth. And what the pandemic has done is amplified the fact that we need more support. And just because children are resilient doesn't mean that they haven't experienced a lot. They have been through a lot. And then add on top of that, the shift between in-person and online and then hybrid schooling, so much uncertainty can create feelings of anxiousness for them.
And children, of course, are learning how to communicate. They're learning how to socialize. So they might not be able to verbalize why they're acting, why they're doing the things that they're doing or what they're feeling. So what should we look out for if our kids are languishing?
We want to look for a few specific signs. And the biggest thing I want to say is you want to see if there is a change in their baseline behavior. So we can look at, a lower attention span, increased irritability, lack of focus or trouble concentrating. Is there a change in their sleep patterns or even eating habits? So we want to be mindful of those things, but really focus on whether or not there's been a change in their baseline behavior.
How do we know, because I'm just going over the terms, how do we know if we have cave syndrome?
It's whether or not we're feeling reluctant to go out and engage with others. It's whether or not we're feeling reluctant to engage in activities in which we would have prior to pandemic. Thinking about and checking in with ourselves, how we're feeling about going to that social gathering or meeting this person for coffee, even if it's outdoors. That checking in piece is important because, Nam, far too often we're so busy checking in with devices and social media that we absolutely forget to check in with ourselves.
Or watching Real Housewives on a loop like me. What do we need to look out for if we're feeling burnt out?
It's again that excessive tiredness, that exhaustion, not the I need rest, it's the I've rested and I'm still tired. It's the lack of motivation or focus, and also for us as adults, that trouble concentrating. Making sure, again, we're checking in with ourselves to see how am I feeling today? It's about shifting from time management to priority management and looking at our current context, our current circumstance, and what it is that we can accomplish in the time that we're given.
I think a lot of people thought this holiday season would be very different from last year, or we were hoping that it would be different. But right now, the situation as it stands, the cases for Omicron, they're surging. A lot of people have had to pivot and change plans for the holidays. But this is the situation that we are living in right now. How can we put some joy, some merriment back into our lives?
I appreciate that question, Nam. And there's so much uncertainty, especially with the new variant. This holiday, very different than last holiday. That holiday was very different than the holiday before. So I would love to offer some suggestions. The first one is to insert a routine as much as we can over the holiday season, as well as creating structured plans. And I'll tell you why. It's because it allows us to feel some sense of control, especially if we are feeling overwhelmed. Now, I'm talking about creating structured plans. Another tip tip is to plan the worry time. And I don't know about you, but I am a worrier, and especially during the pandemic, thinking about my family, frontline workers, students that I work with, leaders that I work with, I worry a lot. And what I've learned is that I worry about things that I can't control. So I plan that worry time, but I put a boundary around it and then switch to action. What is it in this situation that I can control? And then speaking about boundaries, ensuring that we are creating clear and drawing clear boundaries, saying no when it is that we want to, and also setting clear expectations. And when we think about all that is happening, and the context is consistently changing, it's on us to redefine. And what do I mean by that? You know, we have an idea of what the ideal holiday should look like, or what it should feel like, what happiness should look like or feel like, or what success should look like and feel like. We need to redefine, because we created those ideas and definitions before the pandemic, but the world changed. And yet we compare ourselves to these outdated definitions. So intentionally redefining what the ideal holiday will look like this year can be helpful. And the final thing that I'll share is that we should be asking for help. We should be saying no when we have to and when we can, and ask others for help. And this can actually promote oxytocin in others when they're able to help us.
You know, I really like the suggestion of setting 10 minutes aside and then using that 10 minutes to worry, because I'm a worrier. And then after that, moving on and doing action steps. Just one more question for you in our last minute together. What do you say to people, you know, who might feel as if this is not what we wanted, this is going to be what it is, and I just need something to get me out of bed, something to just make me look forward to the next day, the next week, the next year?
You know, I say this to everyone, including my 5-year-old son. I always say, you've got this. And I say that because we've all proven that we've got this. It's been 644 days. We had to adjust. We had to do things in new ways. And I'm not saying it was the best case scenario, and I'm not saying it was optimal. What I'm saying is we did it. But I also say, and I would be doing a disservice if I did not add, that when you feel like you don't, that's okay too. Because there are going to be some good days, there are going to be some great days, and there are going to be some days where we don't feel like we've got this. And that is a natural stress response to what it is that we've experienced and what it is that we're experiencing. So what I would say is, yes, you've got this. But when you feel like you don't, that's okay too.
And ask for help if you need a helping hand. Rumit, thank you so much. We really appreciate your words of wisdom and spending time with us tonight. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Nam. Take good care.
You too. That is the agenda for Thursday, December 16th, 2021. Pandemic puppies and kittens helped many people cope through this tough time. Tomorrow, are there enough veterinarians to care for them all? I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thank you for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.